Here you go. An elderly man, who seemed to be homeless and dressed in tattered clothes, was slumped over. It looked like he had succumbed to the cold. At least, that's how it seemed to me. I hesitated a bit but then approached him and spoke. "Are you all right?" The old man weakly nodded and grabbed my hand. Seeing him in his ragged clothes, I felt I had to do something, so I quickly gave him my jacket and $100. "Please put this on, and use this money to buy something warm to eat." The old man looked at me in surprise, a bit confused, but accepted the jacket and the money. He quietly thanked me. "Thank you, so much." I had no idea that this encounter would significantly change my destiny. My name is Ryan. I worked at a nearby paper mill. Lately, the economy seemed to be recovering, but my salary hadn't increased at all. "What's going on?" "There's no use complaining, so I just hoped my pay will rise." I walked through the park, a shortcut to the mill, and entered the gates of the factory. As I changed into my work clothes, I greeted my co-workers with a cheerful good morning. Since I started working at the paper mill, every day begins with this routine. My company recycled a large amount of waste paper. We handled various types of paper collected from households and businesses. The waste paper was reused as recycled paper, so my job was making the environment friendly and sustainable. My job was to sort the waste paper. Each piece of paper must be visually inspected and classified, requiring experience and insight. With practiced hands, I sorted the waste paper into categories like newspapers, cartons, and magazines. My colleagues were also quietly focused on their work. Before I knew it, it was lunchtime. The mill workers left the work area and headed to the cafeteria. They lined up in a queue. When I entered the cafeteria, it was filled with a lively atmosphere. The cheerful conversations and laughter of the workers echoed throughout the room. I sat in my usual spot, enjoying lunch with my friends. The menu included breakfast sandwiches, daily specials, curry rice, pasta dishes, and salads. Thankfully, even the most expensive meal was only about $4, which was easy on the wallet. Today, I chose curry rice. It came with a salad. Then, I returned to the table with my friends. There were delicious-looking dishes in front of everyone. While enjoying lunch, the conversation ranged from work topics to family stories and the latest sports news. As smiles and laughter continue, everyone quickly recovered from the tiredness of the morning's work. Suddenly, I noticed, there were a lot of people having curry today. When someone eats curry, the aroma makes everyone around them want curry too. It's a common, amusing sight. Lunch always tasted better when shared with friends. As I stuffed my mouth with curry rice, I silently thought about how happy I was. It's no exaggeration to say that this is why I work so hard. The lunch break passes quickly. For the mill workers, lunch was the most precious time of the day. During lunchtime, I made sure to recharge my energy and then tackle the afternoon work. In the afternoon, I moved to the recycled paper production line. Here, the sorted waste paper was finely shredded, dissolved in water, and turned into new paper. I was responsible for adjusting the paper to the preset thickness and size on this line. As the work progressed, I started to feel tired. However, I took pride in my work and never compromised on quality. With precise movements, I operated the machines, producing a lot of recycled paper throughout the day. In the evening, I washed my hands and left work. By then, the night shift workers had arrived. The factory never slept. On my way home, I still saw many piles of waste paper. The thought of this paper being given new value excited me. My day ended, and tomorrow, the same routine began. In this way, I took pride in my work. I was satisfied with my job. However, despite the improving economy, my salary hadn't increased, which was a problem. I wondered if anything could be done about it. I couldn't seem to save much money. I felt anxious about the future every day. I was grateful there's almost no overtime. However, it's still a long way off. When I thought about my old age, I felt nothing but anxiety. I lost my parents in an accident when I was young and was raised by my grandparents. They were loving, strong, and a great support for my life. 5 years ago, my grandfather passed away. Since then, my grandmother had been living alone, so I moved back home to live with her. She's like a mother to me. One day, my grandmother fell and broke her leg. I was informed at work that she was taken to the hospital by ambulance. I thought my heart was going to stop. That day, I left work early and rushed to the hospital where she was taken. I couldn't calm down until I saw her face. When I arrived at the hospital, I hurried to the room where my grandmother was admitted. However, due to the recent infection control measures, I couldn't see her. I desperately wanted to see my grandmother. There was nothing I could do. I managed to speak to the nurse in charge. My grandmother had an X-ray and CT scan as soon as she arrived at the hospital and was diagnosed with a femur fracture. They had to perform traction on her leg, which involved anesthesia, drilling a hole, and inserting a metal rod. It's painful just to imagine. Her surgery was scheduled for about a week later. The problem was that I couldn't see her at all. Typically, depending on her condition, she should be able to move in a wheelchair the day after surgery, and visits should be possible then. A week later. How is she doing now? Currently, she's relatively stable. We hope you'll be able to visit her soon. We will take good care of her until she is discharged. So please don't worry. Hearing this from the nurse, I reluctantly went home. Usually, my grandmother would greet me with a smile and dinner. The house felt unusually spacious and lonely without her. Her phone was left on the kitchen table. I couldn't even contact her. The next day after work, I took my grandmother's phone, clothes, and other essentials to the hospital. Since I still couldn't see her, I left a message saying, "Please call me on your phone once you've settled." I just wanted to hear her voice. That night, my grandmother called me. Her condition seemed to have stabilized. I felt a bit relieved hearing her sound okay. She told me she had tripped over a small step and fell hard. She hadn't thought it would result in a fracture. Perhaps due to her age, her bones had become more fragile. Despite earnestly taking calcium to increase bone density, my grandmother couldn't escape the effects of aging. It seems that age inevitably takes its toll. It's something that happens to everyone as they get older. She ended the call considerably to avoid disturbing others. From that day on, she started contacting me daily, even if just for a short time. The conversation always ended with, "I want to come home soon. I can't take rest properly in the hospital. I know. I'm waiting for you. Hope you can come home soon. I'll visit you soon." The conversation always ended with this. A week after she was admitted, her surgery went successfully. I had no idea how challenging it would be from here on. To my surprise, rehabilitation started the day after her surgery. Every day after that was filled with rehab. One day, she was transferred to a rehabilitation hospital, starting another long period of rehab. Since the rehab hospital was closer to my workplace, I visited her every day after work. She kept saying, "I want to come home soon, I want to come home soon," as usual. She was also worried about the hospital bills. We were indeed starting to feel the financial strain. I began thinking about finding another job in addition to my current one. I did a lot of research, but finding something I could do while keeping my current job was quite difficult. After much thought, I decided to start a part-time job delivering newspapers. Delivering newspapers started early in the morning. I delivered them to nearby houses. At first, it was physically tough, and sometimes I even got lost. So, I started with a weekend delivery route. During deliveries, I would encounter various kinds of incidents, and deepen my interactions with the townspeople. My delivery skills started to improve, and I became able to deliver newspapers accurately even when pressed for time. Then, I switched to a daily delivery route, delivering newspapers every morning before going to work. I became quite knowledgeable about the town I lived in. Now, I felt confident enough to answer any question about it. I often received words of appreciation and encouragement from the townspeople. A few months passed, and I gradually managed to cover my grandmother's hospital expenses. Her hospital stay didn't seem to end anytime soon. Every day, I delivered newspapers in the morning, went to work, and then headed to the hospital. My grandmother looked forward to my visits every day. "Ryan, have you lost some weight? Are you eating properly?" Recently, she had been worrying about me instead of herself. Even though I got used to the newspaper delivery job, the weather and seasons made it tough. Especially the winter mornings. Words can't express how difficult it was. One cold winter day, I was doing my usual newspaper delivery job. Then, I saw an elderly man who seemed homeless, dressed in tattered clothes, slumped over. It looked like he had succumbed to the cold. At least, that's how it seemed to me. I hesitated a bit but then approached him and spoke. "Are you all right?" The old man weakly nodded and grabbed my hand. Seeing him in his ragged clothes, I felt I had to do something. I quickly took off my jacket and handed it to him. "Please put this on, and use this money to buy something warm," I started to say as I looked into my wallet. Of all days, I only had a $100 bill. This was important money for me. Giving it away would make my own life quite tough. It was the money I had planned to use for my lunch for the rest of the month. But this man seemed like he was in real trouble. Wearing such clothes on a cold day like this. Well, I had no choice. There was no other way. "Please take this. First, move to a warm place and buy something hot to eat." I handed the $100 bill to the elderly man. He looked at me with surprise, a bit confused, but accepted the jacket and the money. Then he quietly thanked me. "Thank you so much." However, he seemed to have trouble moving. "Are you okay? Let's at least get to the nearby convenience store." I offered my shoulder to him, and we slowly walked to the store together. Fortunately, it was a Saturday. After delivering newspapers, I took a shortcut through this park to get home. If it had been a weekday, I wouldn't have taken this path. I felt grateful it was Saturday. The elderly man barely spoke, and he was walking with weak steps. It seemed he couldn't talk rather than didn't want to talk. We walked slowly, finally making it into the warm convenience store. The warmth was a relief. Since I had been moving around delivering newspapers, I felt warm even after giving him my jacket. I even felt a bit hot. With the little money left in my wallet, I bought 2 bottles of hot tea, and we drank them together. Thankfully, this convenience store had an eat-in area. We sat there in silence, sipping our tea. The old man's face looked a bit better. Seeing that made me feel relieved. Good. Looking at his face, I was reminded of my late grandfather. He was kind. I wondered how he was doing in heaven now. I wished he could have lived a bit longer. Thinking about that, I hoped this man in front of me would stay healthy. I wished he would cherish the life he had. I truly felt that way. At that moment, the elderly man suddenly spoke. "Thank you so much. You've been so kind to me. I don't know how to thank you." No, it's the least I could do. It was really cold, and I was worried about your health." "It's not much, but I hope it helps for now." "Please get something to eat," I said, watching him regain a bit of strength before we parted ways that day. Despite my own struggles, I thought about this as I made my way home. The $100 I had just withdrawn from the bank for this month's expenses was already gone. I'll have to cut back this month. I thought for a moment, but then quickly reminded myself, no, this man's life is worth more. My wallet might be empty, but my heart is warm. I found myself laughing. I also gave away my only jacket. I don't have a coat to wear tomorrow. After eating a meal with what I had at home, I searched my closet for something that could replace the jacket. I found some old clothes I had neatly stored away. There were many things I thought I could never wear again. Even clothes from my school days were still there. I needed to find something suitable for work. As I rummaged through the closet, I found an old jacket that had belonged to my grandfather. This is it. Remembering my grandfather fondly, I decided to start wearing his jacket from that day. I immediately put on my grandfather's jacket and headed to visit my grandmother at the hospital. Even though I visited, I still couldn't enter her room due to infection control measures. We always met in the visitation room. Lately, my grandmother had been able to move around with crutches. She was eager to recover and walk like she used to. But she often complained that her rehab sessions seemed shorter since moving to the rehabilitation hospital. If they don't increase my rehab time every day, I won't recover quickly, and I won't be able to go home soon. I've talked to the doctors. But nothing changes. Isn't there something that can be done? I understand how you feel, but the specialist is deciding your rehab based on your condition. I think we have to trust them. I'll talk to the nurses too, but let's trust the doctor and keep trying. This conversation happened every time. Oh, by the way, I thought your grandpa had come to visit today. Where did you get that jacket? Did it surprise you? Actually, I told her about what happened that morning. My grandmother was tearfully pleased. You did a good thing. You've always been such a kind boy, Ryan. So, you gave away your jacket. I see. I hope that man recovers and gets his life back together. We talked about it together. I sincerely hoped for that too. From the next day, my routine resumed as usual. The only difference was wearing my grandfather's jacket. I felt as if he was protecting me. A few months passed. Busy with daily life, I had completely forgotten about the elderly man. As usual, I finished my newspaper delivery and was taking the shortcut through the park to head home. It was on one of those days. Then, I saw the elderly man I had met before. To my surprise, he looked completely different from before. He was well dressed and looked clean. Is that really the same person? I did a double take. The elderly man noticed me and walked towards me with a happy expression. As I looked at him in astonishment, he said, "I finally found you. Thank you so much for helping me the other day. I am deeply grateful for your kindness." No, it's nothing. I'm so glad to see you looking well. Thank you. I've been wanting to find you and express my gratitude properly. Please come to my home. Your home. You have a home. That's amazing. I was so happy I couldn't help but shout. I had thought he was completely homeless, so something must have changed for the better over the past few months. Maybe the $100 I gave him made a difference? I had briefly wondered, but I was glad I gave it to him. The joy welled up inside me. When would be a convenient time for you? How about tomorrow, Sunday? Oh, sure. Thank you for the invitation. But really, your gratitude is enough. Even as I said this, I was curious to see his home. I wanted to hear about the developments he had experienced. It seemed like he had many stories to tell. While I was thinking this, he handed me a letter. Despite my hesitation, I decided to accept his invitation. I followed the address written on the letter. When I arrived, I was stunned. For a moment, I checked the address on the letter to make sure I was at the right place. In front of me was a grand mansion surrounded by a high wall. Beautiful gardens spread out around it. I never imagined it would be such a house. Could I have been bewitched? It even made me feel that way. The door opened, and I was led inside by a servant, gasping in astonishment at every step. The interior was spacious, filled with luxurious furnishings. Large paintings by famous artists, valuable antiques, and a magnificent table under a grand chandelier adorned the space. The servant guided me to a seat. Welcome. Thank you for coming today. Let's start with the meal, the elderly man said as he took his seat. The table was laden with a lavish array of dishes. It was a full-course meal with wine. It began with elegant appetizers like scallops and caviar, followed by beautifully cooked fish and meat dishes, and pasta with fragrant truffles. I had never eaten such a feast before. Almost everything was new to me. I had never experienced such luxury. Finally, dessert was served. Thank you so much for coming today. I am truly grateful for meeting you that day. I always believed we would meet again, somehow. I really wanted to see you again. So, I tried to walk in that park around the same time as often as I could, but a lot of time passed. Oh. I only go through that park on weekends. On other days, I deliver newspapers and head straight to work. I see. That's why we couldn't meet. Delivering newspapers before going to work is quite unusual for young people nowadays. Actually, my grandmother broke her leg and has been in the hospital for a long time, so I started the job to cover her hospital expenses. That must be tough. How is your grandmother doing? She had surgery and is fine now, but the rehab is tough. She's in a rehabilitation hospital and should be able to go home in about a month. That's good to hear. I hope she recovers soon. But there's something I've been wondering about. What happened after that day in the park that led to this change in your life? I was completely shocked. The elderly man laughed and replied, I see. Well, I guess that makes sense. I'm truly sorry for keeping it a secret. Actually, I own a factory nearby. What? Then why were you? Oh, actually, the day before, my family gathered to discuss the future of our company. I'm getting old, you see. And since our company is family run and I don't have any children, there were many disputes about succession. And I've always thought it's time to move away from family management and find a leader who understands the employees and has genuine compassion. But in my position, it's hard to see people's true nature, so I wanted to find someone who could treat everyone with kindness and empathy, regardless of their status, and I was desperate to figure out how to meet such a person. I see. So, I thought, what if I pretended to be homeless? The person who would still show me kindness would be someone who could treat everyone with genuine compassion, he continued. I was speechless. And so, I decided to put this idea into practice in that park. But everyone just passed by without a second glance. People were cold. As I started to really feel the cold and my hands and feet were freezing, you approached me. You seemed like a godsend. You gave me your jacket. And after looking at your wallet, you handed me the $100 bill despite hesitating. I will never forget that. Well, I just did what anyone would do. No, it really meant a lot to me. I wanted to thank you sooner and tell you the truth. I also wanted to return the jacket and money you lent me. I feel truly sorry for what I did, testing you like that. I must apologize. You may not forgive me, but I was at a loss for words, completely taken aback. I couldn't believe it. So, that was all a lie? For a moment, I remained silent, bewildered. Deliberately setting up such a situation, it's unimaginable. But he was freezing, and helping him seemed only natural. Well, he is safe and sound now. Well, I'm glad to see you are doing well. But honestly, I was shocked. I'm really sorry. I was too impulsive. It was truly thoughtless of me. I really am sorry. If you don't mind, I'd like you to visit me occasionally. Oh, sure, that's fine. I want you to be my friend. Talking with you truly brings me peace. Though I felt a bit of anger, I couldn't bring myself to stay mad. I agreed to visit him again and went home. Thinking about it later, I realized I had been lightly deceived, and I felt a bit down. It's always been like this. I've lost count of the times I've been fooled by obvious lies and manipulated by friends. I'm like the poster child for gullibility. Thinking back to my school days, I found myself laughing. It's all right. This is how it's meant to be. This is just who I am. Thinking this, I headed to the hospital to see my grandmother. But she seemed different today. Had she overdone it with her walking practice because she felt she wasn't getting enough rehab? It seemed the leg she had surgery on was starting to hurt. I understand how you feel, but you pushed yourself too hard. You can't just do things on your own. You might end up delaying your discharge. I spoke to my grandmother a bit sternly. She was supposed to be discharged by the end of the month. I wondered if she would be okay. I felt sorry for my grandmother, who wanted to go home so badly. I made her promise not to overdo it and then left. And so, my usual routine resumed. One day, suddenly, my direct supervisor, John, called for me. Feeling puzzled, I headed to see John. Ryan, thank you for your hard work. I have a task I'd like you to take on. It's the development of a new product. Will you do it? I was taken aback. The details involved developing a new product using specialized technology and optimizing the production line for it. If successful, there was a chance for a promotion. I couldn't believe such an opportunity had come my way. But could I do it? I felt a bit anxious. With John's guidance, I threw myself into the work. To hone my skills, I researched and worked late into the night. Meanwhile, my colleagues, upon learning of this, grew increasingly discontent. They wondered why I had been given this task. Out of jealousy, they started to harass me. They deliberately messed up the work area, causing defects. Their goal was to ruin my work. I refused to be defeated by such actions. I tried to ignore the harassment and focus on my work, but my colleagues' bullying only escalated. I didn't know what to do. This was a first for me. Colleagues I had once been so close with. I was filled with sadness. working late into the night and delivering newspapers early in the morning. Repeating this routine daily was starting to take a toll on me, both mentally and physically. The only relief was being regularly invited to the elderly man's house. By now, he and his wife felt like family, and they even celebrated my grandmother's discharge with me. The elderly man's wife was very kind as well. It felt like I had gained another set of grandparents, and I was happy. Today, like usual, I was invited over. "How's work going recently?" I talked about my job as usual. I also shared all my recent troubles. "That's not good. Have you talked to your boss about it? Isn't there something that can be done?" We discussed these things while having dinner, just like we always did. I confess that it made me so sad to see my once friendly colleagues turn on me that I sometimes thought about giving up the assignment. But someone has to do it. "Since you were chosen, you should see it through. Keep at it," he encouraged me. Thus, I vowed never to give up and focused on my work with all my might. During this time, John noticed the harassment against me on the factory cameras and decided to take action. He reprimanded the colleagues and assured them that by responsibly taking on their tasks, opportunities like this would come for them too. Additionally, to prove my competence, I am to showcase the results of my assignment to all of my colleagues. With John's support, I succeeded in developing the new product and optimizing its production line. My colleagues were surprised and gradually stopped resenting me. They began to recognize and respect my abilities. I couldn't believe I had such strength within me. Even I found it hard to believe. I thanked John. "Thank you so much for your support. I don't know how to express my gratitude." "No need for that. You've always been dedicated and sincere in your work, and it showed. You deserve it." Soon after, my accomplishments were recognized, and I was promoted. One day, I was summoned to the president's office. I worried that I might have done something wrong. What could it be? Knock, knock, knock. "Excuse me." It was my first time in the president's office. I entered nervously. To my surprise, I saw a familiar face. "Wait, what's going on?" "Congratulations on your success and thank you for your hard work. As I can't keep going for much longer, and I know it's sudden. But I'd like to start teaching you my job gradually." "What? What do you mean?" "I have carefully observed your true nature and character. Do you remember the story I told you before? Well, that's the reason. I would like you to become the next leader of this company in the future. What do you think? Will you accept?" There was a stir among the executives gathered in the president's office. "What? You're the president of our company?" I was shocked and felt embarrassed for not realizing it sooner. It's always been like this for me. I stood frozen for a moment. I couldn't believe it. "I am truly honored by your offer, but I don't think I'm capable of such a responsibility. I still need to gain more experience. I'm not in a position to take on such a role. No, I think of you as a son, or perhaps a grandson. That's why I want you to help me. I need you to support and lead our company. I'm confident you can become a leader who truly understands and cares for the employees." I never expected such an offer. "Well, it's not something that needs to happen immediately. I want you to stay by my side, learn, and support me. As you do, you'll naturally grow into the role. I want to transform this company into one with even higher employee satisfaction. Please help me make this happen." I was at a loss for words. "I would like some time to think about it. I will give you my answer after careful consideration. Thank you so much for this opportunity." I returned to my current job. From then on, I was conflicted. Such an opportunity might never come again. But the responsibility was immense. I had never thought of myself as particularly fortunate, but I believed I had been happy. Actually, I always tried to think of myself as a happy person. Losing my parents early was unfortunate. But as a result, I got to live with my grandparents. I love my grandparents dearly. My grandparents doted on me as if I were their own child. I thought of them as my parents too. When my grandmother broke her leg, I was really shaken. Juggling my job and a newspaper delivery route to pay her hospital bills had been tough lately. But it was through that hardship that I met President Anderson. If my grandmother hadn't broken her leg, I might never have met him. Looking back, it feels like I was guided here by fate. Meeting President Anderson felt like something out of a TV prank show, and it was sort of hilarious when I thought of it now. I was completely fooled. The reveal came much later, but I was truly shocked at the time. When I consulted my grandmother, she was, of course, very surprised. To think that the old man from that time was the company president. I was angry that he tricked you. But I'm glad you did the right thing and stayed true to yourself. It's because of your character that you've been given this opportunity. It's a big responsibility, but give it a try. You're my pride and joy, and I know you can do it. Encouraged by my grandmother's words, I decided to accept President Anderson's offer. From there, things moved quickly. I was appointed as the president's assistant, learning the ropes from him every day. The nature of the work was different, but my approach to it remained the same. The colleagues who harassed me never expected this outcome and seemed to regret their past actions. Even John was reportedly muttering, "I should have treated Ryan better." But I want to reassure everyone. I am still me. When I eventually take over from President Anderson, I will strive to be a fair, compassionate, and exemplary leader. Grateful for this fateful encounter. I sincerely wish for everyone's happiness.